Severan 42 has the 195 countries of the quiz map open up on his computer. Well, that can only mean one thing. Yeah, that's right. Hypothetical viewer who is talking to their screen. Um, we're doing a Severan Rants video, as you can probably tell from the title. I'm being pedantic. Um, yes. So first, I have to do a little apology here because, as is per usual, me and Rumbly neglected our duties to make a podcast episode, but we have a really good reason this time. Basically, what happened is that about 7 seconds after we recorded the last one, um, Rumbly just left. He's been gone for 2 weeks at this point. We just have not had a time to record. So, and then with Thanksgiving, if you're in the States, you know we had just celebrated Thanksgiving and family was over, so that made it all the more tricky. So we have not had the chance to record. I don't even have a lot of it written yet. It's a complete mess. And we knew this was going to happen. And I knew I was going to have to release a video. And I thought, oh, well, I'll do, I don't know, an age of history video or something. And then I got busy with family. And now I'm just panicking and throwing out a Severan Rants video. So this is that. So if it's bad in quality, I know. Don't talk to me about it. I'm aware. But here we are. So we are here to talk about Star Wars. And why did I pick this topic? Well, I don't know why. Well, actually, I don't know why I picked it specifically, but the thing that got me on the topic in my head was that I looked up and I saw a Lego set that I own, one of many, is the Captain Rex helmet Lego set. Great set, by the way, if you're looking at getting one of the helmet sets. I'm very partial, but I've heard the Commander Cody one is very good as well. But I looked up at that and I'm like, I want to talk about Star Wars. And that's what we're doing. So I got into Star Wars when I was very young. My grandmother introduced it to me, and I have loved it ever since. I have been through. I was. The first movie I saw in theaters would have been The Force Awakens, but at that point I had seen all of the other ones, and I want to talk about what I like about Star Wars and what I don't. So here we go. I am very partial. Okay, we'll get this out of the way first because this is not a hot topic issue. The original trilogy, movies 4, 5, and 6, are good. Just, I mean, like, that's like saying the sky is blue. It's not exactly new information. They're good. Out of the three, um, uh, I. Oh, wow, I'm blanking. Empire. Why am I blanking on it? The Empire Strikes Back. How did I not? Okay. Fake fan. Fake fan. I blanked on it. Is the best out of the three. Obviously, that is almost not disputed. I think out of the three, I would say A New Hope is the weakest. Only because it's the first, so it's trying to set up an entire world. And sometimes that can be done poorly. It was not in Star Wars' case, but it is very dependent. And I think Lucas and his team did a fine job introducing the world. I just think out of the three, it's the weakest. A lot of people say that Return of the Jedi is the weakest, but I really like Return of the Jedi. But these are little nitpicks, and overall, I think the original trilogy is the strongest one, just quality wise. But it isn't my favorite. Quality wise, obviously accounting for different technological progressions, we're not counting those because that's unfair to the movie itself. I think the original is the strongest the whole way through. It is not my favorite, however. My favorite has to go to the prequels, and I'll explain why in a second, but I first want to go into a little discussion on my least favorite, and actually most people's least favorite, the sequel trilogy. Dear God, what happened? Okay, first, like I said, The Force Awakens was the first Star Wars movie I went to see in theaters. The Force Awakens is fine. It is not a good Star Wars movie. It is fine. It is basically A New Hope with different characters and a bit of a different story in some places. It is just an alright movie. And I would say if it was The Force Awakens is a fine Star Wars movie, and I don't it was a fine introduction to the sequel trilogy, maybe a little bit weak, but nothing bad. It serviced what it needed to, and I think it would have done fine if the follow-ups had been any better. Okay, and then we need to talk about The Last Jedi and the Last Jedi. Yeah. Where do I start? Where do I start with this movie? It has been so long since I've seen this movie because I refuse to watch it again. But I remember most of it because I saw this one in theaters as well because I thought Force Awakens was good enough to go to warrant see of this one. And wow, it is not good. And here's the thing. I'm willing to give directors and stuff changes on like how they tell a Star Wars story. I'm not one of those people who's very rigid and it has to follow a certain time span, but it just has to make sense. That's all I want. And I think the casino scenes could have worked if they were in a better movie. But how they're done in the movie is they're very, how do I put this? They're just not, they don't really connect the story in any way that makes sense. They go to get the master hacker, if I remember correctly, because what is her name? The short lady from the cantina is busy fighting somebody for some reason. And that's fine. They go to get the guy, and then they don't get the guy. They get thrown in prison because of a parking ticket. Okay. A little bit goofy, but Star Wars can be goofy. Fine so far. They somehow stumble on to a person who also knows how to hack the ship and the things. Okay, a little bit of a coincidence, but maybe it was the Force moving through them. I, and then they have a horse ride through buildings because some reason. It's a mess. And the hyperspace ram scene, if I remember correctly, I don't remember the character's name because I blotted a lot of these characters out of my memory. Holdo? The Holdo. I think the Holdo maneuver is neat. In a visual sense, it is a neat scene. I don't think, however, it is a it I think it introduces a very difficult thing into the story that would be hard to take back, and they tried in the Rise of Skywalker to take it back because it kind of breaks everything, right? If you want it, because what it establishes is that if you just want to destroy a huge ship with smaller ships, hit the hyperdrive and it flies into it, right? Okay, how did nobody think of this before? Because if you're the Rebel Alliance, you're like, okay, we could do this really dangerous stunt to destroy the Death Star. That would take master coordination between all of our pilots and get a lot of them killed. So hopefully, or you could just put a droid in the ship in an X-wing and fly it into the core of the. Why did we not do this? Because that would break it. Now there are things in Star Wars that don't. I mean, tactically that is genius. It's genius, but we're not working off like standard military tactics here, and there has to be a sense of disbelief for the audience. You know that's a tactic they could use, but you are in your head thinking, okay, well if they just do that, then there's no story, so there's a way that they go around it. It doesn't really matter what that how they do that, but you know they can, and you know they do, because otherwise, every little terrorist with a tiny ship could fly into hyperspace and knock out an entire elite. So you assume that it has a counteraction. And then this kind of destroys that. And in the Rise of Skywalker, I believe they say something like that's a 1 in a million shot. Is it though? Like, if you would have just like flown, you you're just it's like aiming a laser cannon. You just turn the hyperdrive on, and you're bound to hit it at some point. And if you don't, you just get away scot free, right? It's and obviously the Rise of now the Rise of Skywalker. I will defend the Last Jedi as being better than the Rise of Skywalker any day of the week because oh boy did we. Okay, so we need to talk about Legends for a second. So Palpatine does come back in Legends, and Legends is interesting. It has a lot of different a huge flip flopping quality from place to place, and it's weird. But Palpatine comes back, and most people are fine with that. But in here, it's like, okay, you build up this character Snoke, and you build up the intrigue of how where he's from, where was he during the original trilogy? Because he looks quite old, and a lot of people are theorizing it could be Mace Windu come back from the dead. It could be all the theories. I remember being in that theorist community and thinking, oh, who could it be? Who could it be? And then it just turns out it's Palpatine. He made the clone because he thought it'd be funny. I I his reasoning is not real. It's just a thing that he did because he thought it would be funny. Oh my god. If I could get on it wrong again. But it makes you sit there and you think, okay, then what was the original trilogy for? It would have been fine if they introduced a new villain. Like Snoke was an interesting villain. It's like this older guy who's was probably around even during the Clone Wars, and you're sitting there like, where was he? Was he from beyond the Reach, or where was he at? We'll never know. He was just a clone. And Palpatine's the main villain again. It's like, oh, he's alive because force science. Okay, neat. But that's obviously not what they wanted to do. That's obviously not what the story was going for. This was something that J.J. Abrams kind of just made up to try to salvage this, and it doesn't work. And then at the end, the big like climactic scene where Rey is fighting Palpatine, and the whole Rebel Alliance army shows up, and it's like, hoorah! We have all of these people. Where were they during the First Order take over the galaxy after the fall of the New Republic? Don't know. No idea. They just went there because Lando was like, hoorah! And that's how the movie ends. And I'll defend the sequel trilogy on this thing. A lot of people give Rey a lot of hate because, well, two reasons. One, she's in bad movies, and two, she's a woman. It's a colliding spectrum of people who don't like women and people who realize that they are bad movies colliding and real, and they're just like, okay, we can get them on this. And it's like, yes, they're bad movies, yes, but it doesn't mean that the character is bad just because she's in a bad movie. Stop, please. But all right, I'm gonna digress on this. Let me talk about something that I really like and the thing that I like the most. So the prequels is my favorite series of the movies, hands down, no question about it. I love the prequels. I know the writing is trash. The dialogue sucks. I know. I like the movies, but when I watch the scenes I don't like sand, it makes me cringe out of my spleen. I am aware. I will not defend them, but I love the story it sets up. And this is why my favorite movies are the prequels. And I don't really want to talk about the prequels themselves I because it's not the prequels. I like the prequels, the movies, for what they set up. But what I really love is the Clone Wars as a time period in Star Wars. And this is my favorite era in Star Wars is the Clone Wars because for two reasons. One, I like the points in Star Wars where it isn't completely clear who's the good guy and who's the bad guy. In the original trilogy, it is obvious who is the good guy and the bad guy, and that those stories are good to be told. Tell those stories. But it's nice to just sit there and be like, are we really doing good in the galaxy? Are we really fighting for a better future? Are we? And the characters have to sit there and ponder on this. There are entire episodes where they had, like when Ahsoka goes to the Separatist capital, and she really wonders, these people aren't terrible. They're just tired of the Republic being this corrupt organization, and the Republic that we hold so dear that we think is right is corrupt, held over by basically an oligarch who has almost unlimited power due to the emergency powers he's given. And are we really fighting for the right side? And we're using slaves to fight our war? Are we really the good guys here? And I love that point. And I love the intrigue that you're sitting there like, the separatists are controlled by the Sith, and so is the Republic, but we're talking during the war. But they have good points. Like, these mostly outer core worlds are not outer core, outer rim worlds are just not taken care of by the Senate and are almost ignored in every decision. Why shouldn't they feel they should have a new alliance that would more emphasize their wants in the galaxy? And it makes sense and it's great. And I love the political intrigue. I know a lot of people watch the Clone Wars show and they hate the political episodes, but I love that stuff. I love seeing the political intrigue inside of the Republic and seeing how the inner workings of it works. What kind of backdoor deals do you have to deal with? And I think it's a perfect. There's a video, I will link it in the description, about how the prequels is a perfect allegory for the fall of a republic. And I believe he uses Weimar Germany as an example of it. And it's perfect. It's a direct allegory, not and basically representation of how a republic falls into. Yeah, I'm okay using fascism. It's the empire. I'm fine using fascism as a shorthand. And I love that. And then second off, the war itself, because in George Lucas has outright stated this, he took a lot of inspiration from the Vietnam War for his for the rebels and the empire, and that makes sense. It's for the story that was told. But obviously, the Clone Wars is a real war. It's a real conflict between two even-ish sides who are fighting world to world, siege to siege, not guerrilla tactics. They're fighting an outright open conflict, and I love that part because it brings out some of the coolest weapons ever. My favorite vehicle, the ATTE, is featured heavily in this because it's a very good attack vehicle. And the droids, the different like the commando droids or the rocket droids, and the ships that are used, like the droid, the Tri Fighter, and the I forget what the one that stands up on four legs and then shifts over is called, but I'm sure you have a picture in your head of it. I love that part, and I love seeing the clones who, because when you're watching the original, the whole point is that the stormtroopers are these faceless drones that are doing the Empire's will. But when you're watching the Clone Wars, every clone, or at least every like clone regiment or patrol or whatever, is unique. They have their own. They have different colors, like the 501st is blue and the 212th is orange, and you can tell them apart. And I love that the individuality of people who are really all the same because they're clones who express their individuality through their names and their numbers, through their. It's. I love that storytelling, and I love the storytelling of the Jedi being able to tell every clone from each other because of how they feel in the Force. That is great storytelling and shows that they aren't just one mindless mob until they are. And as a finality to this, I want to talk about Order 66 because I think from all the media I've watched, it is one of the most tragic and one of the best told finales to a trilogy and the start of another that is, I think, has ever been told. So originally, Order 66 was just the Revenge of the Sith version where you see all of the Jedi get slaughtered, and you're kind of like, okay, well, I have no attachment to any of these people. But over the years, we have gotten so much about it that it just brings it there. So in the Clone Wars show, we see Order 66 mostly through the eyes of Ahsoka Tano, and when she is shot at by both Captain Rex and the rest of the men on board the ship, she does her best to not kill any of them because, well, I mean, these are her brothers she's fought with for years, and if you remember in that story, in that arc, a lot of the clones who are fighting her have her they're not tattoos, her face prints. I don't know. Are they tattoos? I always forget what the Tortuga. But they have her face like prints on their helmets. Like these are her brothers who she's fought with for years, and for a reason unknown to her, they are now shooting at her. And all the Jedi go through this. And they don't know why. None of them know why. It's that unknown nature. If you go back to the Bad Batch, when the Bad Batch are sitting there and they get the message, they have no idea because they are irregulars. They don't have their chips don't really work all that well, and they see the clones gunning down Master not Luminara Unduli, but I don't remember her name. But the master of Kanan Jarrus. That's what I'm thinking of. But they are sitting there like we have no idea what is going on. And they ask the regs, and now they've changed completely. Like Order 66 is not only a tragedy of the Jedi, but of the clones, because obviously the Jedi are getting slaughtered, so that's like terrible and awful. But it's also the clones losing all sense of free will because they can't control what they're doing. They can hesitate, they can fight back against the chips, but they can't resist forever. Rex, you can see it in Rex's face. He is obviously trying to resist it, but everything in his body, everything in his programming is telling him to shoot. And I just think it represents that tragedy so well. The tragedy of these people. And if you've read any of the literature, you can see in the writings when the clones talk about that night, or the event, that they all didn't want to carry it out, but they knew what was going to happen, and they knew they had no choice but to carry out the order. And it's just, I love that tragedy that both befalls the Jedi and the clones, and then the clones get chucked aside like a bunch of used dish rags to be retired so that the stormtroopers can come in because, well, to be honest, the clones just have too much individuality for the Empire to stand. It's Order 66 is a wonderful piece of storytelling, and I'm glad that George Lucas and Disney as a whole, it has expanded on that time period and given it the attention it deserves, because I thought when the Clone Wars came back, I knew they weren't just going to throw this part to the wind, and I was glad about that. I love seeing that story because it's so much more complicated. Because that's what I wanted out of the sequel trilogy, is that is maybe a war between instead of the Republic. If you're gonna go with the First Order stuff, maybe the Republic is like the Empire, but obviously the good guys fighting against the guerrilla fighters of the First Order. Or if you're gonna go go the way of like the remnants of the Empire like George Lucas laid out, that would have been really interesting because they would have been fighting almost guerrilla tactics and trying to stamp out these, basically flipping the script on who's fighting who, where. And I just think that would have been way more interesting than a good guy versus bad guy fight, and due to a big laser cannon, they are now the rebels again, even though they've had, what was it, like, okay, Leia was like, Leia was pretty young in the, I don't remember how long. I think it was 30 years of like almost uncontested rule of the galaxy, and all of their forces were on 3 planets. And I know they were demilitarized, but like, come on, man. Anyways, I have no idea how long I've been talking. At least 20 minutes, and I definitely haven't said all I want to about Star Wars. I love. I'll just finish it off with this. I've loved Star Wars since I was like 6 years old. It has been a franchise that I've watched from before I even started like kindergarten. I have merchandise from stemming from a lot of Lego Star Wars, mostly Clone Wars stuff, but some Empire and even a couple First Order sets. One, two, three First Order sets, and one the Rebellion, but the bad one, the bad Rebellion one. And between that and just I've loved Star Wars for a very long time, and I'm just hoping that it doesn't go the way of the MCU, where we just get show after show, movie after movie, and that's we're kind of the point where we're going to, where they're bad. I've liked what most of what Disney has put out outside of the trilogy. Rogue One was good. I think I liked Ahsoka. I know some people didn't like Ahsoka, and I'm partial because I like the Clone Wars a lot. But I liked Ahsoka. The Mandalorian has ups and downs. Overall, is very good. The Bad Batch was phenomenal, and I'm not just saying that because it takes place inside of the time period of the Clone Wars and the aftermath of Order 66, but it is very good. Book of Boba Fett completely blew. I think it could have been a good story if, I don't know. Boba just really can't be a main character. He's a very good side character. I just don't know if he's cut out to be a main. But yeah, I'm hopeful of where Star Wars is going to go. I really hope they keep telling the story, not like after the establishment of the New Republic and after during and after the Clone Wars. I hope they keep telling stories there because I think there's so much more to explore than sequel trilogy or go before or go like Old Republic and the those wars. I think that would be so much fun to tell, and I just hope we get good Star Wars content. And other than that, I know this video has been very rambly and very long, and if you are still watching, thank you so much. And with all that said, I'd like to thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye!